I have a question about hockey culture, and I know you've mentioned it a few times in our interview, and obviously in Everyday Hockey Heroes, you've been able to highlight people from marginalized communities who might have felt otherwise that they could have been pushed away due to the constraints of this game of hockey. The sport of hockey and the culture of hockey has been under a microscope over the past year. We know about the tweets that Kima Lou had put out about which ultimately led to the firing of Bill Peters and so many other stories of racism and has kind of come out over the last year and just even years past with regards to the culture of hockey. And it's become so much more important for some of those stories to be told and for people like journalists like ourselves to be able to ask those questions. I know I've tried to make a concerted effort on my own part to do that. I'm just curious, Bob, even though you're in semi-retirement and even though you have the writing in your books, do you feel that you have an important role to play in creating a positive change in hockey culture to make it more welcoming?
I think we all do. Certainly individually, I feel that way. I think collectively we should all feel that way. And it's funny. I look at the stories in the books, and I don't know if there's such a thing as an empathy gene. And if there is an empathy gene, I'm not sure you can exercise a gene necessarily. I was never very good in science or math as a kid. But the point I'm trying to make is that I think, given all that's gone on in our world, and you mentioned Akeem Aliu, all of last season was one story after another. This coach doing this, and it was just a litany of men behaving badly in hockey, and so the way I try to look at these stories is so if I'm reading a story about Joey Gale, who tells his story in the book, and he's a kid from Minnesota, now he's an adult who lives in Seattle, but he was a teenage kid from Minnesota who was a closeted gay young man because he didn't feel confident to tell his family or friends that he was gay, and he was playing hockey, and he just didn't feel welcome in the hockey culture. Even though he wasn't out, he still didn't feel welcome because he knew that he was gay, and there was a lot of homophobic slurs and a lot of overt homophobia, but also the unintended consequence of using some terminology that people in hockey have used for a long time. And until you find out it's hurtful to somebody, you didn't know enough to stop saying it. So he pushed away from the game, but he found his way back into it. It's a marvelous story. So there's that. Jessica Platt, rather. Transgender story of her journey and in trying to gain acceptance, and again, very similar theme, being pushed away from the hockey culture because she felt it was toxic when she was growing up, but coming back to it, and then not even being embraced after going through the transgender experience, not fully embraced, but sticking with it, and then playing the game at the highest level possible for women, and finally getting a measure of acceptance. And her story is absolutely incredible. It's so courageous. It's so inspiring. And it's so enlightening too for, somebody of my age and background to really understand the emotional impact of what the transgender experience is all about. So it didn't matter what story it is, whether it's Joey Gale or whether it's Jessica Platt or whether it's any of the stories in the book. I just always try to, as a hockey dad, in the original book I wrote, Hockey Dad, I've always viewed my life, or tried to view my life, through the prism of my kids. In other words, how would I feel if that was my kid? And as I said earlier in the thing, the book is the common denominator. Everybody featured in these chapters, Joey Gale, Jessica Platt, everybody else, they all are the same as my kids. They grew up absolutely loving hockey. It's just in their blood. They absolutely love it. But then you read how difficult it was for Joey or Jessica or some of the other people in the book, and you're like, well, my kids didn't have to go through that. It's not right that they had to go through that, but they did. So what can we do to make sure that other people like Joey or Jessica don't have to go through it and don't have to feel like being an outsider and and don't have to feel as though they've gone to hell and back on their journey. And to various levels, all the stories are like that. And it doesn't have to be, it's not just the book's not just about diversity and inclusion and going through and ticking off, well, we got a story on some black guys here, and we've got LGBTQ, and we got this. I mean, there's a story there of Rob Faka, who's the chief U.S. scout for Chicago Blackhawks, and I know Rob and his family a little bit, and I know that they had a little boy named Louis who was born with Duchenne muscular dystrophy, and what it was like for them to find out that he had this rather serious childhood illness that can really impact the family's lives, and the story of how Rob and his whole family decided to create a campaign around the arrival of their son with Duchenne muscular dystrophy called No Bad Days, #NoBadDays. It's a really inspiring story. And so when I think of trying to be empathetic, I want to be empathetic that, yeah, if there might be somebody out there who they have gotten a diagnosis in their family that's very serious, and it's nice for them, maybe that family, to read the book and read they're not alone. Somebody else was there and they did this, and this, and it inspired them, and now it could inspire you. So that's kind of my feeling when it comes to the responsibility we all have to try and push the thing along here a little further with hockey culture.